What was the worst day in Fortnite competitive history? In other words, the 9/11 of Fortnite. Don't worry, I'm from New York. I can say that. Well, over the last 7 years, a couple of dates in particular could take the crown for the worst of all time, such as December 11th, 2018, when players were 1 week into a brand new Season 7 and it had generated mixed reactions. But fear not, as there was a massive $1 million tournament ahead later that night, the Winter Royale. The EU finals had already been played out 2 weeks prior and it was a huge success, so the NA finals would be just the jab of life the competitive scene needed. But then, hours before the tournament started, Epic dropped patch 7.01. It was a small patch, but with a concerning headline: Ready your sword, wield a powerful new weapon in Battle Royale. Oh look, the community thought, another weapon for the casuals to have fun with. But for some ungodly reason, Epic without warning added the sword to all tournament playlists as well, just hours before the NA Winter Royale finals were set to happen, and to nobody's surprise, the entire tournament was ruined. The major plot points of the tournament all centralized around the Infinity Sword and who was able to claim it each game. Every shred of competitive integrity the tournament had was wiped. The winner of the tournament, Nolan, was pretty much entirely forgotten about because of how badly the sword ruined it. And second place 72 Hours missed out on first place and an additional $15,000 because of a glitch with the sword.
This would have been a 3-point swish. Look at this. Look at that. You know how free this rotate would have been?
Despite Epic having more than enough time to hotfix it out of the game prior, they did not. A day later, the Infinity Sword was vaulted from competitive, with Epic simply stating that they, quote, messed up. As bad as that was, it wasn't nearly enough to get a hashtag trending on Twitter. On March 25th, 2021, Epic Games privately contacted Clix and told him that he would be banned if he didn't stop wagering, and to recommend others to do the same. Prior to this, wagering was institutional to Fortnite Competitive. They provide one of the best ways for players to rise to prominence, as the prospect of money encourages everyone to try their hardest. In addition, they provide pro players something to do outside of tournaments, as ranked mode has historically sucked. This tweet from Clix would go viral and prompt the competitive community to start tweeting #RipFortnite, and it eventually went trending on Twitter. Now, whether or not you agree with the existence of wagers, the concerns of the community were still valid. Leading up to that point, Fortnite had banned sub-customs as well, a practice in which streamers would host scrim lobbies with an entry fee of a subscription to their Twitch channel. Epic opposed this practice as they believed that paywalling entry to matches was bad practice, so combine the ban on sub-customs with how bad stream snipers and ranked are, and competitive streamers had nothing left to do. The competitive community was in shambles and Epic wasn't doing anything to help. But over time, it seems that Epic have been pretty lenient on policing this, as pro players still do wagers to this day, under the guise of calling them tokens as opposed to wagers. So why did Epic announce all these bans privately instead of posting it on their blogs? Well, this is an extension of what happened on October 15th, 2019. On this day, Epic debuted Chapter 2, but along with this, changed up their entire strategy and communication. Before this day, Epic Games released detailed patch notes for every single update, but starting on the release of Chapter 2, Epic completely cut off communication to the community and stopped releasing patch notes. And unfortunately, this has become the new normal, and to this day, Epic is pretty uncommunicative with the player base. Despite numerous community pleas to bring them back, Epic hasn't budged. Not even Apple, the largest company in the world by market cap, could get Epic to bring back patch notes. In typical Epic fashion, they have to this day never communicated why they did it. The likely reason is that they were just sick and tired of people complaining too much about the patch notes before they even jumped in to play the update. But one thing they weren't sick and tired of is my YouTube channel, so definitely subscribe. No pressure though. Ask any competitive player what their favorite feature is, and one likely answer you will hear is Siphon. Siphon is vital to the enjoyment of competitive and nearly all players agree, but Epic on the other hand don't think so. Siphon was first tested all the way back in late 2018 with the first ever pop-up cups, and was later incorporated into all playlists in patch 7.4, that includes pubs too. For many, this is remembered as the most fun time in Fortnite history, but on March 27, 2019, Epic just decided to remove Siphon and increase material farming from pubs. In Epic's eyes, Siphon increased engagement for the top 10% of players, while leaving the other 90% frustrated because they were getting dumped on. But at the very least, Siphon was kept in competitive, and for the next few years all was well. That was until May 22, 2023, where Epic just removed Siphon from all competitive modes without an explanation. Nobody in the competitive community reacted positively to this, and the change made no sense. The only plausible explanation for this is that Epic wanted to make ranked mode more competitive by discouraging W keying. However, without any significant incentives, players won't take practice seriously, and without solemnity from the players, the house of cards that is ranked mode falls pretty fast. Despite insane uproar, Siphon would remain disabled in tournaments for the next 16 months. Only in September of 2024 did Epic finally acknowledge Siphon again and ran a 6-week-long trial to determine how it should return, where we ultimately ended up with the 75 HP overtime we have today. But Siphon wasn't the only beloved game feature to be axed in Season 8, as Stretch Resolution also suffered the same fate. In the early days of competitive, you could alter your FOV by changing your monitor's resolution, since Fortnite had an unlocked aspect ratio. But on April 3rd, 2019, Epic made a post signaling that they would be putting an end to stretch resolution. In their explanation, Epic detailed that despite making the game feel worse, players still used it because it gave them an advantage, and they also tried saying it caused motion sickness for whatever reason. While it is understandable to remove the FOV changes granted by changing your aspect ratio, since it was a convoluted process that gatekept newer players, what is unreasonable is that to this day, they have never added an alternative, no FOV slider whatsoever, despite nearly every other game on the planet having one. But worse than this was February 14th, 2023, the day NA Central was introduced. The server was located in Dallas, Texas, and brought a much needed ping decrease for those living in the central US and Mexico. So how was this bad? Well, Epic decided that in all competitive seasons going forward, NA would now be united under one server, no longer split between East and West. While this did have some benefits like a larger overall prize pool and finally allowing up-and-coming NA prodigies like Poyo a chance to compete with the best of the best, there were many more negatives. According to the NOAA, 40% of the US population lives within 50 miles of the coastline, while the majority of Canadians either live in the Toronto megalopolis or the Vancouver metro. So now many players who previously played on 20 ping or below living on the coast were now forced to play on Central for tournaments, which meant a minimum of 40 ping, or for Canadian players who are a lot further north, upwards of 70 ping, which is unplayable for high-level competitive. The majority of NA players did not receive this well and to this day ask for NA East to come back. As of now, NA is once again split, this time between West and Central, which just makes the entire thing redundant. Every date discussed so far is tragic, but now to what I believe are the 3 worst dates in Fortnite Competitive's entire history. Starting with May 24th, 2024, the release of Chapter 5 Season 3. The Cars season was debatably the worst season launch of all time for competitive. Of course the cars were horrendous, but those weren't in tournaments. However, every other busted aspect of the season made its way into competitive. The Nitro Fists, which turned Fortnite from a third-person shooter to a knockoff Smash Bros game. Once those got removed, players had to contend with the Nitro Effect, which removed all brainpower from box fight engagements and just encouraged mindlessly holding W at everything in front of you. There was crossbows that when combined with the medallion, gave you infinite ammo to spam explosives at other players, and even after all of that was removed, the game was still a joke due to the presence of shield cactuses, which dumbed down every tournament to a DMR surge trading simulator. But in a moment of brilliance, Epic fixed this all. Just one day before FNCS Grand Finals started, pretty much ruining everyone's strategy. The disastrous launch of this season, along with the consequences of adding so many wildly unbalanced items into competitive, easily makes us the 3rd worst date in Fortnite history. In second place is August 27, 2019, the day Epic nerfed turbo building. In what is possibly the most perplexing and tone-deaf patch note line ever written in Fortnite history, Fortnite increased the turbo build interval from 0.005 seconds to 0.15 seconds, which is 30 times slower. In Epic's eyes, it was done in order to bridge the gap between high ping and low ping players, as well as reduce the efficacy of turtling, but the only effect this had on the game was completely ruining years of skill progression. Many compared this to the events leading up to the death of H1Z1, where the developers of that game changed core gameplay mechanics, ultimately killing it. Fortunately, the community avoided a catastrophic end as Epic reverted it one day later. So, the Turbo Build nerf is second, then what is first? Well, I cheated, because it is not a single date. Rather, it is a cheater epidemic that started around last year. Competitive Fortnite in the latter half of 2024 was an absolute shambles due to the sheer amount of cheaters that were running through competitive lobbies. Leaderboards were filled with cheaters and pros were sometimes playing with them, and Epic's response to this was radio silence. From September to November, Fortnite Competitive was seriously on its last legs as more and more people started to pick up cheating due to how easy it was. But finally, on November 26th, Epic publicly addressed the issue by putting in major restrictions on tournament eligibility. Then 1 month later, Epic very conspicuously sued a cheater, and then another one, and then another one. Despite the legal threats, many players continue to cheat and many lower level tournaments like solo cash cups are still unplayable. As of the making of this video, the cheating issue isn't entirely remedied, and it probably never will be. While Epic are doing great things to crack down on cheating, such as flinging lawsuits out left and right, other things they've done such as unbanning streamers after they play with cheaters doesn't really set the best standard either. While the cheater epidemic is slightly better than it was in late 2024, there is no denying it is still destroying the game at the moment, with FNCS winners still being banned for cheating as recently as Chapter 6 Season 1. Making this the closest competitive Fortnite has come to death. Subscribe and check out my second channel links below, or the other videos on your screen now.